I'm Yves de Jager. I'm the Executive Director of FIDE Europe, and it's an honor to have that job because I get to do this type of thing. I get to have a job where I can tell my children that part of the joy of my job is to work with friends. And I've been invited to this family by a friend of mine. He's sitting here in the room. I think it was somewhere in the beginning of the year, the first meeting. Now we do them in autumn. A friend of mine, David, said, we have a project running in Belgium soon, and this was the soon-to-become Oost-Belgian model, and there's like a gathering in Madrid of a few people from around the world who are working on deliberative democracy. I've been invited, come along. And I was like, okay, whatever. So we jumped on a plane to Madrid, and I met a small group of people, at that moment 30, about 30, 35. Arantxa, you might have the exact number, but we all fitted in a room, yes? I'm now one of the old people when they say who did 7 assemblies who has to stand up. I felt young then, I feel a bit older now. We don't fit in one room anymore, yes? And yes, I know our venue burned. But even if the venue wouldn't have burned, this family is getting so big, we can hardly get it in a room anymore. That is a very good thing, but it also means we're coming at crossroads. Democracy as such is coming as crossroads. I think we were much more optimistic those about 10 years ago, not yet, not even, but we were still optimistic about some things. We saw some dark clouds at the horizon, but hoping they would fade away. Democracy is really at crossroads. I think this also means our work has to go from play to seriousness, and that is what I heard a lot of the sessions, both in the pre-program yesterday, but also this morning, right? Things are serious. We can't just be playing and testing and, you know, I've heard from time to time methodological geeks, nerds, etc. We need to also become activists and people who really think about how we play with power and make sure that we are a counterpower, that we don't tell each other that we would be one. So democracy is at a crossroads, but also the movement is at a crossroads. We've grown, but we've diversified, yes? And this means democracy R&D is now so big that we are different groups, different continents. It's been shown yesterday how diversified this movement has become. That might also mean it changes. And so I want to emphasize still for those who haven't done it, and I'll do it again at the end of my speech, please give your input. We do this every democracy R&D, but this time I think it's more important than ever because, as I talked to Felipe and Dira this morning, the movement will really change drastically over the next years. And so these are really moments to get re-involved if you've forgotten about it. I was asked to give a bit of a wrap-up what the conference was, and I've decided to just take some sentences from every session I've been to and let other people talk. The first session I've been to in the Permanent Assembly's session in the Brussels Parliament, Madeleine, a beautiful name, I think, the name of a wizard, said, if you can't let people say why they are proposing a recommendation, then you lose half the battle. Yes, politicians have to feel why citizens want that change, not just they want to reduce the number of kilometers on motorways or why they want to reduce the speed, but why. We've thought about this. This is crucial. I've heard in the evening somebody say that if we protect the democratic house by putting barbed wire around it, but the core of the building is rotten, it will crash and we will have beautiful barbed wire around the ruin. If democracy internally is not strengthened, we can put shields around it, we could put barbed wire around it, but if the internal thing isn't good, structurally sound, and flourishes, it will collapse. Now, then my friend Fatima was giving a speech here, very tired, but I think everybody saw how energized she was after 2 hours sleep. I can tell you, you should once see her when she actually slept 8 hours. She told us that we need to have radical inclusion, yes? Not invite people, not just ask them to dance, but ask them to organize the party with us. And I think it's an important message. It resonated. I've heard in several sessions people actually referencing that keynote speech, like the radical inclusion. So please, let's think about that. And then I had one of the most frightening, but also beautiful, not even metaphors, but symbols of where deliberative democracy has moved. There were 2 deliberative democracy experiments in the Ukraine last year, and one of them spent half of the time in a bomb shelter. The citizens were in a bomb shelter. If we are thinking about where democracy is at crossroads, you couldn't find a more beautiful symbol. Yes? Above their head, war is going on. The worst where democracy can go has happened, but the citizens were told you can postpone, and what I've heard in that session, they didn't want to. They wanted normalcy. They wanted to create something. It felt good for them to do this. So if people can deliberate in a bunker under gunfire, it is really almost, I could say, what I feel is something human you want to do. We want to co-create. We want to work together with other citizens and do something positive in even the darkest of times. So this morning, Anthony shook us up. We need to show the value of what we do. We've also been self-depreciating very often. Many of us are intellectuals, and we're like, yes, can this restore trust? Yes, but if you, etc. And I've heard also Eva say this in another session. The other side could also be doing that, but they don't. And if we keep being very careful and we don't show the value, we are not really advocating for what we stand for. We've been experimenting. Now we should say, we know this works, you should do this. Yes? And we should also almost tell politicians, if you don't do this, this is not due diligence. Yes? It is like living in a house without fire insurance. Yes? You can do this, but actually you know that this would help you, and you choose not to do this. We need to become more assertive. I heard Mel also say, just getting it in the books is not good enough. We need politics. We need to get our hands a bit dirty. Yes, over those years, again, we've been experimenting. We were happy that we were allowed to do some experiments, but I heard Mel's call for we need to really also a bit stand up and get into politics, otherwise things will not move, and her research has shown that. And the funding, I talked to some people here about funding also there. We need to become bolder, we need to work together, make groupings and call for bigger budgets and really, again, appeal that this work is important. We really have to call out that what we do works and we need to get this through. I've heard somebody say some workshops are too hard. And I think that's a compliment. It also means that we've gone from initiating and re-explaining what sortition is, and etc. We're now a movement where we have workshops where, like, you come in, you need to know your stuff, and you really need to get going from the start. It's good that some workshops are too hard. It means we're at the bleeding edge. Benjamin, I heard you say, we tell stories. We all tell stories. That's the way we can convey information, and how people talk to each other in assemblies, and how we sometimes get overkill by PowerPoint. What works is having citizens talk to each other, have them tell a story, and suddenly they rediscover how they can convey information themselves to their fellow citizens. We grant them that. Yes? And then finally, in the final workshop I was in, I discovered that if I would live in Switzerland, I would be a young guy, like I was in Madrid. I would be a very young guy because I would be 6 years younger than the median voter. The median voter in Switzerland is 57, I learned in that workshop. We were trying to see how, with citizen assemblies, we could know input and whether we should, in the group I was in, we discussed whether we should oversample young people, because 27% of young people vote in the canton we were discussing. In Switzerland, a rich, wealthy country where we think democracy is flourishing, almost 3/4 of young people don't show up anymore. And I think democracy will not only die if it's attacked, but also if we get passive and ignorant about it, and we just take it for granted. So we really should get these people engaged again. Now, the movement itself is also at a crossroads. And I think we can see democracy R&D as what started as a small family with a second generation, a third generation. And so your first family party is 30 people, and you can sit them around a table. And then comes a second generation, and then that becomes a bigger gathering with several tables, and you have a young people's table. And I think from Madrid to Brussels, we are now at the point where we are several generations in, and maybe one table, one meeting might not be able to get everybody around the room anymore. We already have people who couldn't make it here. We had people, for example, in Pakistan who signed up, provided over 30 documents to the authorities and couldn't get a visa, had a plane ticket, and they are not here. They're in our minds, but even many people who wanted to be here are not here. So at some point, we might not sit all at one table anymore. There is no convening for the next year yet. There is no candidate. But this is not a problem in itself. It means the movement has become so big that on a voluntary basis, it becomes hard to host that whole family gathering. Yes? And so we don't have an answer for you yet how that will develop, but that is why you need to get re-engaged with Felipe, Indira, and David in the discussions now on how we are going to see this movement develop, how we were going to organize these different tables at the family dinner, and how often we meet again for one gathering, and how we do that. So please get engaged. So what I want you to do now is, you've been here 2 days, you've been here with us. Take a minute and think about one piece of hope that you didn't have when you entered the Flagey building 2 days ago, and that you have going out. And I mean, you're all deliberative practitioners. Something new that you've heard during one of the workshops, but also, thinking about Anthony and Mel and the session this morning, also one worry, something you were maybe a bit happy, clappy about 2 days ago, and now you go out like, I really need to work on that. So please take a minute and think about one piece of hope you have after these 2 days, and one thing you worry about or think you should be more occupied with. Okay. What I'm going to do now is what we started with. You remember the icebreaker? You stand up if. Please stand up if you were a member of a citizen assembly. We say, we're always saying we shouldn't do these things without the citizens. And so I'm going to give my final word up to 2 citizens here who have participated in an assembly. And I think if I have to hand over to somebody, it can be the 2 citizens who were part of youth assemblies. The floor is yours to tell your hopes. Thank you.
So, what gives me hope? Actually, I want to share first a feeling. At the moment, I have the same feeling like after the assembly. In the last 2 days, I saw many people working together, despite all the differences between us, like in an assembly. To see that we all share the same purpose and, also the will to shape a better future is inspiring and giving me a huge amount of hope and also energy for the future. Thank you. to letting me have this feeling again.
Yeah, I think very simply to just echo what Connie has said, the fact that each of you are here is what gives me so much hope, especially as a young person, because to see so many people from so many different countries and backgrounds, organizations, sitting here and running workshops to safeguard principles of democracy, to give the people who are typically not heard their voice, I think is just the biggest indicator of hope for our future that we have. So from the bottom of my heart, I thank you.
Thank you from my side too. Thank you for having been here. Thank you for all your work. Goodbye. Thank you.